Big Brother House, you are live on Channel 4. Please do not swear.
Too late for that. Too late for that.
For those of us who are our generation here in the UK, you'll know that all too well.
Yes, literally the minute it started, Big Brother House. Please.
You are live on Channel 4. Please do not swear. Hello to everyone joining us on TikTok.
And now we've got, what is, on Jet 2 holidays.
Oh my God. That was that's all we said all the whole time was in Kosovo.
Yes.
That was the theme of our trip, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. And now
nothing beats a Jet 2 holiday.
And now you can get, what is it?
£200 off a family of four. The whole holiday cost £5,000. Yeah, that £200 is really going to go far.
20k and you're saving £200. If you're going to spend 20k, lay £200 to Sandsborn.
How is everyone in the chat on TikTok? Let us know. Come in. How are you doing?
Someone said
we've missed talking to you guys.
Cupcake said opad. It does everyone like that beginning, because we wanted to have something in the beginning, didn't we? To just warm it up, you know, bring the vibes in. And I found,
well, we might have our own little theme tune soon.
Hopefully.
Who knows? Hopefully. Cupcake says she loves it. Oh. I'm assuming Cupcake is a woman, by the way.
Yes,
hello,
Cupcake is a woman.
Min Rama. So we are fresh back from our trip in Kosovo. We spent 4 days in Pristina last weekend. I had the absolute time of our lives. We're not going to tell you too much about it though, because we've vlogged the whole weekend and that vlog will be coming out very, very soon. So you will get to see what we got up to over the last weekend when that comes out. So we're not going to give you any spoilers. You're going to have to stick around to find out, because this evening is about something else completely.
Yes. And just before we move on, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our newsletter. I'm not trying to sell the newsletter, but please subscribe, because you'll see all the
you have to be our biggest fan. You have to be subscribe to our YouTube, comment, subscribe to follow us on TikTok, on Instagram, subscribe to our newsletter, everywhere you can find us. Follow us.
Yes, do, because we will be sharing everything we did in Kosovo in the newsletter, on the YouTube vlogs, on LinkedIn, on Instagram, pretty much everywhere. We're going everywhere. We are
world domination is where we're heading for.
We are Beyonce. At some point, people need to thank us.
This is why I need Leo, because look at this energy. Look at you just got to be your own biggest fan, and I love it.
Yeah, you have to. Anyway,
so, Leo, what are we talking about tonight?
Well, one of my favorite
to this one.
One of my favorite topics ever. About women and
how
women.
Oh my God! No way.
Yeah, can you believe it?
Can you believe it?
And how women are not allowed freedom.
We're not talking about feminism as well, are we?
Well,
by any chance?
Maybe, if we get the guts to, because you know.
Yeah.
If anyone can tell, Kosovo has literally transformed us. We've come
back.
Oh,
honestly, it really, really has. Sorry, I keep looking down, but it's because I'm trying to keep up with the comments on TikTok. You've both helped me move away from my homophobic family. Wow. Well done to you.
Tracy Beaker.
Well done to you. Tracy Beaker, well done to you.
Oh, bug off.
I love that. I saw that. Sorry, this is completely on a tangent really quickly, but the Tracy Beaker actress is it Grace, her name?
Yeah.
Was on the podcast, and I was like, oh my God, fangirling, how cool.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. We couldn't share like right there and then, because safety first, you know.
Yeah, safety first. Exactly.
Anyways,
let's get back to what we are doing this evening, which is not Tracy Beaker, unfortunately.
No, one day we will, if she has, we just need to do a DNA test and see if she's got Albanian DNA in her.
I know, right?
Just kind of assimilate her into the Albanian DNA and just, anyways, let's move on because I'm just sounding stupid now. Sorry, guys.
You're not sounding stupid at all.
So,
who's seen this video floating around TikTok this week? Show of hands. Show of fans, because it has roughly around 120,000 views currently on this TikTok page. I don't know if it's been posted anywhere else, which probably it has. Maybe it's on Insta, I don't know. But we thought it was a really, I'd say interesting, but I don't think interesting is the right word. It piqued our interest. How about that?
Yes, I think I was just going to say we don't need to ask men what they think because they just out themselves on social media. So they do our job for us. So thank you so much.
Sadly, don't worry, Albanian teacher. We're going to play some clips of it.
Yes,
if you haven't seen it, we are going to play some clips of it.
Yes. Ready?
Ready, let's go.
Pesh femnat sodit. Po pritujnë për katë unë tash edhe më martu me kopti për dure me dal me ta me taksiun I shej.
Me çkun di ti tash gjysa 2 javë desh.
Kur to me mu rregull është ajo, po më vet në vet ku çkan. Vet më thon shka me shuh që ndeti, ajo vet do të më thonë ju. Edhe jon lazdru shumë se edhe femna është si të njeksh, kurson e za. Si të kthej shkryt gjithë për mas si hije.
Çushilla.
Thank you so much. Thank you. There's a lot to unpack here. We chose this video.
I know.
Because this is exactly... No, you don't even need to be in the cartoon to think like this. I am a massive believer that you can be in Pristina, you can be in Tehran, you can be in Ulcin, you can be anywhere. If where there's Albanians and you're Albanian, you can be anywhere and you will have this kind of mentality.
Oh no, yeah, absolutely right, because there seems to be this notion of like this stuff. Vision northern shut, vision carton. It doesn't happen in the cities. We're so progressive in the cities, as if this mentality knows borders, as if like abuse of any form knows borders, like it's just going to come on. Tirana, those who are perpetrators or those who have this mentality, I can't abuse women and I can't have this mentality.
Yeah. They're going to be like, yeah, exactly. And no one's going to say, well, I'm sad people push him. So, no one's going to say that. No one's going to say that. A perp, anyway, is always going to be a perp. And
exactly.
Thank you to this wonderful guy for being our sacrificial lamb today.
I know, right? And they've always, I mean, like, we'll go into it a bit deeper, but the fact that this whole video has been framed as if like it's comical, almost like humorous, also is dangerous in on itself. We're going to go into it. Someone just said, what's he saying? They're not Albanian speaking. Basically, he's just saying that today's girls are out of control, that a woman of today shouldn't want to go out clubbing, raving. She shouldn't want to go out she shouldn't want to go on holiday with her friends. Basically, a woman of today should not have any freedom outside of her husband and her family.
Yes, and she should be at that stage where she herself will say, no, I don't want to go. I want to stay with my husband. But he's saying, but I still want to go out. I still want to go clubbing because I'm a man. Whatever that means.
Well, that's what he thinks, right? That like apparently we're too free and that we're completely crazy for wanting independence, because wanting to go out with your friends and having holidays and living lives that don't revolve around men makes us crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And in a way, it means that women have gone crazy. They don't want to marry village boys. They want freedom. They want to go out with their friends. If a girl gets invited on holiday, she should say no. She's not entitled to leave the house. And what really that translates to is freedom is insanity for women. Obedience is virtue and disobedience is shame.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like it's really important not to get distracted by the humor in it and how casually he's saying it, because
Yeah.
methonion pesh, it's not just an insult, right? It's like it's trying to diagnose, it's trying to act like it's a warning, a punishment, and it's what gets said when women stop complying, when they stop performing obedience, and when they step outside of these roles that's expected of them, the roles that kept our own mothers and grandmothers stuck in silence. So he's not actually angry that we're crazy, like lovely little bit of gaslighting there for you.
Yeah.
He's angry because we've become so far out of reach and we threaten everything that patriarchy, misogyny promised men like him. So misogyny and patriarchy promised him a grateful, obedient woman who stays in line and doesn't
Yeah.
ask any questions. And that's what he
Exactly.
means when he says yon chupish. That's what he means, that women are no longer falling in line, they're no longer obedient to his ideal of what women should be like.
And I can't control them. And because I can't control them, my masculinity and my ego is being targeted and attacked, because this patriarchy that I was brought up in, and like you said, Lejla, so well put, that I was promised, is now crumbling, and I don't know what to do with that, because women should be dropping, literally kissing my feet. That's how I see it. You know, they should be begging for me to get married to them.
I don't know. And that's why it's so dangerous, right? Because we can laugh it off like, oh my God, this is just so funny. It's just Nidyan Katon, like he doesn't know what he's saying. And it's so easy just to laugh it off as something humorous and to say, like in Pristina, Tirana, or wherever, as if like the whole of Kosovo is Pristina or the whole of Albania is Tirana. Like that's not how it works.
Exactly.
But it's because every time men are having these conversations saying that girls of today are too much, that it's not just actually an opinion that we can brush off, because what they're echoing is a culture that's completely terrified by women who have boundaries and who are now saying like, no more, I'm not doing this anymore.
Exactly. And just as Cupcake pointed out, and Sheher Tanya Jusa Sherid, which in English it basically means that the town or the city, half of the city knows you're women. But the thing is why is that wrong? Why is that wrong? I know to them it's like, oh, she's just, you know, she's sleeping with everyone and everyone knows her. But aren't you doing the same thing, baby boy? And also,
baby boy, oh my God.
but to genuinely, baby boy, because we're out, you can't even call people like that men. But also,
I said I was looking forward to this one tonight. Here we go. We're starting. We didn't even make it that far.
You just need to poke me a few times and I'm out. But also, in a way, aren't a women allowed their own freedom, and aren't women allowed to explore? And aren't why are we still putting women in this bracket that they should be there like tangled, waiting in the tower for her man, and when her man comes, he puts her again in another tower called his home, and then the woman lives her whole life serving him, and then we get mums and aunts and Jusha grandmas and hola, where they're constantly I'm forgetting my words, rejuvenating that cycle, and never getting the trauma is never actually being processed, and then we all wonder why we've got a whole generation, not even just a generation, but a whole country and ethnicity that's still suffering with mental health.
Yeah, and you know, there's another Lejla in the chat. It's not often I meet many Lejlas with the same spelling as me. Welcome, wow. Lejla. She said misogyny is very much so embedded into our modern day society. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I'll tell you why, because in particular, when you come into marginalized ethnicities such as ours, in cultures where women's sacrifices is like celebrated more than like actual huge achievements, so women who survive, who endure, who keep quiet, they're the women that are like, oh, you know, we see it in the comments all the time, oh, my mum was like this, you don't know what it's like to suffer. Yeah, I actually do know what it's like to suffer, and I wish I didn't. But why are we only bringing women into the conversation when it comes to suffering?
Exactly.
Why are we holding women to the standard of they're only strong when they suffer?
Exactly. And then you find yourself watching TV articles or news and stuff where, oh, this woman has lost her life at the hands of her husband, but he had a whole history of domestic abuse. What did you expect would happen? And even though this video is so much in, it's human stuff, but this is very dangerous, because what you're promoting is this idea that women have to keep their heads down, have to shush, have to never have an opinion. And that's what makes it dangerous, because this is a pure example of the beginning of a perp. That's how I see it. That's just genuinely how I see it. A perpetrator does not have to hit you ever to be a bloody fucking perpetrator.
No, absolutely. And this is how it starts, and this is why I say that we can't laugh at comments like this.
No,
because it's simply just echoing what the rest of the culture actually thinks. And this is exactly how abuse and violence is enabled, and how that cycle is allowed to be played out time and time again. Because actually what's happening here, right, is what he's saying is we liked it better when women were scared.
Yeah.
We liked it better when women were scared, because women are easier to manage, they're easier to silence, they're easier to control when they're on their own, isolated away from everyone else.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah. And just to add on to that, a man's honor depends on a woman's silence.
Oh my God, absolutely.
Yeah. And a woman's value ends at her womb. So that's all she's good for. That's
absolutely. And I think when we have this way of dressing, and this is my biggest bugbearer, of dressing control, coercion and fear up as like tradition, right? Because we say, don't wear that, don't go out, don't say this, ole krud, mshile goyen, what will people say, make marfturen. But really the actual underlying message of it is, for women, is stay afraid.
Exactly.
Because a woman who isn't scared is someone you can't control, someone who's unpredictable, and then deemed as completely unloyal to the system. In this case, we the system is the culture, right?
Yeah.
And the way that patriarchy, misogyny, violence and abuse towards women and girls thrives is on silence.
Exactly. And the rules of like women shouldn't go out, it's not about the women being safe. It's about protecting that man's ego, because men don't want to lose power, like I said. But so they paint a woman's independence as a threat. But at the same time, Albanian men can go out, travel, have fun. But when a woman wants to do the same thing, it's more torp, that she's lost all honor. And that's, they're scared of the female autonomy. They're scared of a female being in touch with her autonomy and being in touch with her own independence, and letting her own intuition and her own education and her own decisions actually lead her life, because they're used to a woman always looking at the man to make those decisions for her.
Yeah.
And now it's a different situation.
The thing here is, as well, is the way that it's like sold is, and it's an actual real tactic. It's a real perpetrator tactic, right? And like you say, because sometimes we think that abuse is just the violence, and that's not the case at all. But it's the pathology of the way he makes it sound like women who want freedom are crazy. So he's pathologizing women who don't want to abide by these cultural traditional norms. I'm so sick and tired of saying that, like they are crazy. So it's how a woman is saying like, this hurt me, and she suddenly becomes too sensitive.
Yeah.
And if she sets a boundary, she's now too difficult. And if she wants autonomy, she's now crazy. And that's how patriarchy, misogyny protects itself. So when people are coming in the comments and saying this stuff doesn't happen in our community anymore, we've progressed so much, what you're really missing out on is this is the insidious part of our culture, of our community, that still plays out every single day.
Exactly. And for the people, because we've been hearing it a lot, for the people that say, oh, They just go on these TV appearances, or they come into the comments to go viral. But we don't see it like that. We see it as an in-depth, microscopic view of exactly what men in our community are thinking. It is so clear as day, because they feel untouchable when they say stuff like this in the comments, and they come out on TV or whatever like this, on live, and they do a video like this. It is clear as day of exactly what they're thinking, and they don't see it as danger. They see it as the standard mentality for everyone. And that's why I said in the beginning, this kind of mentality is not just in the Katuna, it's not just in the village.
It's everywhere. It's everywhere. It's rife everywhere, and it's particularly rife for us in the diaspora, because once as a woman you get labelled crazy, bitter, hormonal, unstable, then no one has to listen to you.
And they won't take you serious either.
Yeah, they don't have to be held accountable. They now no longer have to be held accountable. When I say they, I mean perpetrators, men, whoever. They no longer have to be held accountable now for their own actions.
Exactly.
They don't even have to be uncomfortable anymore. They just get to write you off.
Exactly.
Kost mer
ty med det? Kost mer ty?
Kost mer ty?
Ja, tycker mig medveten. Like that's like
our number one comment on TikTok. Kost mer ty bre? Adinska, hesh muso va marak per mu.
Exactly. Exactly. Don't threaten me with a fucking good time, please. What do you mean?
And the thing is, yeah, it's like I mentioned about it being like a form of gaslighting, because it absolutely is. It's actually a strategy and it's done so purposefully, so that women start questioning themselves instead of the system that makes them feel like that they were too much just for simply existing. So if you express your anger as a woman, you're aggressive.
Yes.
If you detach because you're disassociating from everything that's happening, because it's so traumatic and it's too hard to handle, you're cold. You cry, you're hysterical. You stay silent, you're completely complicit. The whole system is a trap.
Exactly.
And you can't win. You have to disappear completely. You cannot win in this system.
Exactly. And how it's even more isolating being in a place like Kosovo or Shqipni, or Albania or Kosovo, because you don't have a lot of avenues or opportunities to actually go somewhere else. Whereas in the Western world, at least we've got that advantage. But then you're ostracized from the whole community. So in one way, you're having to turn your back onto everyone. And again, you're still nowhere. You're kind of like, you just have to start from zero and build this whole culture for yourself. Or what they'll say to you is, you're too westernized. You're too westernized.
But see, because you say that like it's harder back home, and whilst logistically and practically I agree, because they don't have the same provisions in place as we do here, culturally and community wise, I don't actually think it is much easier for us here in diaspora to separate from this mentality and this kind of collectivist way of living, where misogyny and patriarchy and men's needs are put, that they're prioritized at the top. I don't actually think it is easier in diaspora if in any way. I think that women in diaspora probably a lot of times feel more trapped, because their rugdalia is more complicated, because the communities in diaspora are so much smaller. And how do you trust a foreigner? How do you trust them to understand the cultural complexities that you have when you are trying to I don't know, break free from the mentality or leave a perpetrator? So I get what you're saying, like the practicalities and logistically is probably a bit more difficult back home, but the mentality in diaspora, I actually think it's worse.
Yeah, and I agree with you. I just meant it more in the way that in the diaspora, you have to start from zero by yourself, and I personally couldn't do it. That's the thing. I wouldn't be able to do it. So you're more isolated. I completely agree with you. But as you know, if you're strong enough in terms of like, if you choose, I guess, yourself, it's not even that easy, because I don't want to. The thing is I don't want to victim blame anyone, because it's not that at all. I just think whether you're in Kosovo or in the diaspora, it's hard either way. I just think in the diaspora, if you're more assimilated in British culture and you've renounced the Albanian culture completely, then for that situation is a bit easier.
Yeah, absolutely. But then how often does that happen?
Yeah,
How often
it
do you
doesn't.
actually find an Albanian woman who has completely renounced denounced the culture and the community, and then finds themselves in a situation? I mean,
exactly.
probably. I mean, like I found myself in that situation.
Yeah.
But I know that my own lived experience is not common in the sense of how complex it was. But even if I look back, or if I reflect on my own lived experience, when I did finally leave my perpetrator, it was still difficult in the sense that any helpline service or victim services, they still didn't understand me. They didn't understand my cultural and complex needs. They could never get that. They couldn't understand why my family would disown me, why they'd ostracize me. They could never understand that side of it, and they couldn't understand how much more complicated that made my own situation. So either way you look at it, it's really tough.
Yeah, exactly.
But however, if it was still really tough for someone like me to leave and to escape. So imagine how much tougher it is for someone else who doesn't have the same rugdalia as me.
Exactly. And I don't want to sidetrack, but this question has come up, and I know that me and you have constantly shouted about this, and I think it's so important that we mention it. But Pristina's finest, if you say so. One question: most of the violent abuse faced by Albanian women happens back home, not in the diaspora, respectfully. Now, I wish that was true. I genuinely wish that was true. That's not true at all. But it's not, because unfortunately, and I will always say this, no one actually cares enough to do the research and to give safe routes of escape for women in the diaspora. And so we don't have any research. The only research that me and Lejla go by is the research conducted in Kosovo and in Albania. We don't have any research in the diaspora, none whatsoever. But I can't count how many articles and stories I have found myself going through literally news channels and news websites for specifically Albanian women, and it is disgusting the amount of cases that I've come across in the diaspora. Not that I'm saying it's less disgusting in Kosovo or Albania, because it's equally as disgusting. It's traumatizing, but no one talks about it. No one actually puts it in research, because no one has cared enough. And I will always say no one has cared enough, because no one has cared enough to do research in the diaspora. Sorry to cut you off, Lejla, but I had to mention that because it's so important.
No, absolutely, I agree. And I think it's such a dangerous blanket statement to say that, you know, this isn't happening in the diaspora, because it's wrong. It's wrong, point blank, period. That's not true at all. And all of it does really come back to the way that we challenge male entitlement anyway, and cultural shame, because that's when insults that come flying in. So if we're taking it back to this clip, right? So when insults come flying in so casually, like, she's bitter, no man wants her, kosht mertu, she's not right in the head, all of that, it all comes back to the fact that it's rooted in control. Because when women are no longer scared and we're asking for more safety, more respect, more space, which by the way is basic.
It's not even like a standard. Basic, it's not a standard.
Basic. Yeah. Basic. It's just something that the patriarchy and misogyny is not built to handle, because the patriarchy and misogyny thrives off people making comments like saying, she's bitter, kosht mertu, tisje mir me man. It thrives off that. So when we're hearing comments like, this doesn't happen in our community, this doesn't happen back home, this doesn't happen in the diaspora, you're completely negating the actual the fact that this is how it starts, and this is the insidiousness every single day, and it happens in the way that you talk to people, in the comments you make about women. You can't sit here and say this doesn't happen. It absolutely does.
Exactly, especially with the advancement of social media, where now you have Kosovan and the socials of Kosovo and Albania and all the whole Albanian community merge with the Albanian communities in the diaspora, you are already making it a standard of that patriarchal and misogynistic viewpoint anyways, because social media is infecting the whole generation. It's not just like, oh, you know what, today I'm going to go to Jakov and I'm going to infect these people. Tomorrow I'm going to go to Stuttgart and I'm going to infect these people. No, everyone's seeing the same things. Everyone's seeing the same things. It's not better in one place than the other. It really isn't. You could argue that in Kosovo and in Albania, they have moved on a bit better than we have in the diaspora, because we've capitalized the culture. I wouldn't even say culture. I would just say like these man-made traditions. We've capitalized it, and we have fed our children, my generation and our generation, Lejla, fed that same misogynistic and patriarchal ideas, because that's how they left home. So I would argue, because we saw that in real life in Kosovo when we were last week, they have moved on a bit better than we have in the diaspora. But misogyny and patriarchy is being fed through all avenues of social media. It's just fed from everyone, whether it's internalized misogyny, whether it's men trying to control their women, their daughters, whatever it is, and vice versa. It's everywhere. You can't necessarily run away from it unless you're shouting at the rooftops like we are, like Trime is.
Well, yeah, because everything's a desperate attempt to keep us small, right? Pathologizing women is not harmless. So this comment that he makes, like, pesh, femnat, sodit, it's not a harmless comment. It's actually a silencing tactic. And the more we name it, like you say, the less power it has, because wanting freedom isn't a disorder. It's not a mental health disorder.
Yeah.
You're not unstable because you want boundaries. And you're not mad because you're refusing to be afraid of what you're seeing in front of you.
Exactly.
You're not. Get the vibe that you two are making comments to state the diaspora are on the same mentality as back home. You must be new here. We are actually so far behind from them back home. It's unreal.
Yeah.
But it's just, this whole thing is crazy. Like, going back to the videos, because we keep getting sidetracked left, right and centre. This is why I love the lives. This is why I love interacting with everyone in the comments.
We love the comments, guys.
I know, right? Because there's a bit in it when, for me, I don't know about you, but when he says, I don't know if you played it already. About the holiday.
Yeah, I did play it.
Ajo do të më thon jo. Ajo vet do të më thon jo. So even if I tell her she can go on holiday with her friends, she should take it upon herself to say no.
Ja, por jam, unë ty nuk të lo vetëm, kush të bën buk more, ti des unë dhe sa të kthena unë. That's what he's.
But I don't even think it's about that. It's not even about that, because that's just that's just when men weaponize incompetence, and we know that men aren't incompetent. They know exactly how to look after themselves. They just weaponize it because that's just what, again, patriarchy, misogyny has taught them to do. It's more about it being a form of coercive control. So what it's really saying is, even when I pretend to give her freedom, I still expect her to self-police. So I'm going to look like the good guy. I'm going to look like I'm not controlling. I still expect her to police herself. And that is one of the most insidious forms of coercive control that you will find anywhere, whether it's in an intimate partner relationship, whether it's within the family, like a father, brother, your mother, your in-laws, whoever it is. These are some of the most insidious forms of coercive control.
So dangerous, because all of us on this live right now can only imagine what he would do or what he would say if she actually says no.
I don't need to imagine. That was my life. I don't need to imagine. So it's not enough that she gets permission, that she's actually expected to reject the freedom that she's been given, and that, like, her rejection of that freedom will somehow prove her loyalty. Like, it's a very, very paradoxical way of being, right? When you are stuck with a perpetrator. So
yeah,
she's expected to deny herself joy, autonomy, connection to appease his insecurity and to uphold his control, right? And again, we're always going to go back to this, because what are we if not the feminist at work here for Trime? That's how patriarchy works. It teaches women that real love means sacrifice. That
Exactly.
good women are the ones who choose limitations even when they don't have to.
Exactly.
And what's happening here is a double binding, right? So he says he will make out like, you're allowed to go, but if you do, you're disloyal.
Exactly.
You're allowed to have friends, but if you spend time with them, you're disrespectful.
Exactly.
You're allowed to speak, but if you do, you're going to make me feel uncomfortable. And then when I'm uncomfortable, you're going to feel the wrath of it. So what he's really saying is, I want to be in control at all times, but I want to do it without looking like the villain.
Exactly. Because go on, sorry.
No, I was just saying, because sometimes we think that abuse and violence has this really overt Hollywood way of looking, but it doesn't. These are some of the most dangerous forms of control, and you're seeing it right here in front of you.
Yeah, and just to add to that, because he's got a reputation that he needs to hold, not only in his own community, but also in the eyes of his in-laws, because he has to have this I'm a man kind of reputation. But at the same time, what makes me so sad is that we know more often than not that even if you, let's say if you go to your mum or your dad and say, look, he's putting these rules upon me, like I can't do anything. A lot of our women, because I've had this message my whole life, I am married. For all the haters in the comments that are no longer here, I am actually married to an Albanian man. Shocker. Oh my goodness. He's probably the only one that
You're making us crack up over here.
He's probably the only one that exists that is normal. Anyways, but I've always had the message of like, when you get married, when you go to your husband, you make the decisions yourself, but don't forget you have to listen to your husband. So you're already isolated from your family. You can't go to your family because your family has taught you from day one that the last word sits with the husband. You definitely cannot go to your in-laws, because in the eyes of the in-laws, their son is this man made out of gold, that God or whoever knew how to make this man out of gold. So you're already isolated from everyone. The only person or group that you could possibly go to is your own friends that have no resources or no ways to help you get out. So you're isolated in all kinds of ways. Everyone's laughing.
I think you've triggered the chat. And this is why so many women grow up being afraid to ask for anything, because even when something is technically allowed, we're still made to feel guilty for wanting it. And so a lot of the time, he in particular, especially this one right here in front of us, perpetrators like this, men like this, anyone who has this mentality wants the wife, the Nulsa, the women, sisters, whoever, to really deeply internalize the cage. Exactly. But they want us to build this cage within ourselves, and it works. It really works, because then she thinks that she can't ever leave that.
Exactly.
And this is why I got really passionate about this comment he makes in particular, because for me, like, I know this game so well. Like, this isn't something I learned on TikTok or a textbook, even though like I am academically qualified in this field. None of this I could have learned on TikTok or a textbook, because I actually lived it.
Yeah.
Like that part, that double binding, that was my everyday reality when I was married. And like, I was allowed to go places. I was allowed. He would even encourage me to make plans, right? But then punish me when I got home, or question me just enough to make me doubt myself. Like, why did you stay too long? Who else was there? Are you sure that's what happened?
Yeah.
And even though the words were never like, you can't go, the fact of the matter is it didn't need to be, because the guilt that he instilled in me did all the work. And I learned very slowly and painfully that my freedom was always going to come at a cost. And so eventually you just stop. You stop asking, you stop planning, you stop being, you stop going, you stop all of it. And that's not because you're weak as a person, but it's because you're just so sick and tired of fighting and having to defend yourself and your own actions.
But also it keeps you safe, Lejla, at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Keeps you safe.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why it's not weak when victims have to put their own safety first.
Not.
They're managing their risk. And then one thing about, victims and survivors is that they are experts at managing their perpetrator and managing their own risks.
Yeah.
We
It's a
become
full-time job.
at it.
It's a full-time job.
Oh my God, absolutely.
My girlfriend don't let me go out because I'm too lame.
Anyway, this is how coercive control functions in our culture, basically.
Sorry.
Basically.
Paolo, this is not the time and place, Paolo. Sorry.
No, this was not your space. This is how coercive control functions in our culture anywhere you go, especially when it's masked by this fake performative permission. Why anyone thinks they need to give their partner permission to do something is beyond me.
Exactly.
But it's not really about the rules per se. It's about who holds the power to decide when they apply.
Exactly. And the worst thing of all of this, and I guess this is just probably from both of our lived experience, is growing up with strict Albanian dads and an Albanian dad having these like set, I always call them terms and conditions, because that's genuinely how they feel like, terms and conditions. Like, you cannot go out past this time. You are not allowed to have these kind of friends. You are not allowed to have guy friends. You are not... At some point, like, my dad was even like, you're not allowed to have Albanian guy friends. You're not allowed to have white guy friends. You're not allowed to have
nothing.
Black guy friends, because that was the worst of the worst. You're not allowed to do this. You're not allowed to do that. If you have a phone, your mum has to check it every single day. You have to do hizmet, so you have to serve when guests come over. You have to look a certain way. You have to have a certain weight. You have to do all of these things and that's fed to you from the minute you hit puberty.
You know, bingo. And this is the thing, yeah. Because one of my favorite comments is, how dare I get on this podcast, talk about domestic abuse when my ex-husband wasn't even Albanian?
Yeah.
One of my favorite comments.
Because matters so much.
But because first of all, it's okay, that's a whole completely different conversation. We're trying to erase the women who married outside the culture, or even, you know, different sexuality, as if like they don't exist and they don't matter and they don't deserve the support, which they absolutely do. And this is why we're doing this. But to bring it back to this point in particular, because even though my ex-husband wasn't Albanian, the way I tolerated him, his control, the way I silenced myself to keep the peace, the way I internalized blame and confusion, that was Albanian.
Exactly. Because that's all you know.
That was the little girl in me who was raised to believe that women's role is to keep the calm in the storm, that I'm the peacemaker, I'm the forgiver, and I'm the one who adapts to the whole situation. So even though my partner doesn't need to be Albanian for me to handle it in a Albanian, do you know what I mean? Like, that's not it. I didn't need him to be Albanian for me to carry the weight of our culture into that relationship.
Exactly.
Because the roots were already there. The roots were already in me.
Exactly. And this is what this guy is saying. He's annoyed at the fact that these women are no longer listening to their dads or to the men in the family, training them. It's like army camp, training them to think and act this way. He's pissed off that women are no longer doing that and just pushing it aside and living their life for them, because what men like him expect, and not just like him, but almost a lot of Albanians, I imagine, what they expect is a woman to be trained and literally packaged to them, like no smiles, no happiness, packaged, sent like Robion. She's now ours.
Bingo.
She's now our responsibility, and we can do whatever we want with her, because now she's been trained in this patriarchal a misogynistic level 1 million, literally level 1 million.
The final boss level. Genuinely, I think it's the final boss level.
Literally. And she's been trained to not never talk back to me, never say no to my mum, never say no to me, have my babies, and cook and clean and literally do everything I say and that my mum says, because as far as I'm concerned, that's what she's created for.
Well, yeah, it's because we're taught that, like, both explicitly and subtly. So it's both very overt and actually not something you see every day. It's very subtle, that keeping a man happy is a reflection of our own worth. Yeah. And that to be a good woman means to endure, that, you know, we need to be silent in order to prove that we're loyal. And if he's angry, I must have done something to provoke it.
Exactly.
That love isn't really about feeling safe. Our relationship is about how we survive things together and how we make it through the hard times together. I'll tell you right now, if that's what your relationship is, you've got a really shit relationship. Yeah. And you need to get out now.
Yeah. Alarm bells should be literally like ringing, because that is not, I can tell you that out of the both of us, I have a straight relationship with a man, and that is not it. That is not it. I have never, in the 11 years that I've been with my Albanian husband, ever in my entire life, slept with a worry that my husband will wake up tomorrow and question me about something. One, because he's never crossed his mind. He knows exactly who he's married. No, not happening in my house. But if you've got that kind of relationship, you need to get out, because it will only end in one way. It maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but it will come to a point where he ends up putting you at so much risk where you can literally see your whole life flash before you. And not just that, but if you've got kids as well.
And that's why I make the point that my husband's partner doesn't need to be Albanian, doesn't need to be a man, because it's so deep rooted in me that when the manipulation started and I wasn't so awake to it, I wasn't so like consciously aware, I thought it was love and I thought it was concern. I didn't even clock that it was abuse. And I thought that I was just being a good wife, because that's what I saw modeled before me, right? By my mum, by aunts, by grandmas, by other women in the community, because culturally that's how I was conditioned to see love, that I had to earn it through sacrifice.
Exactly. And a lot of women in the Albanian community have been taught that, one, if your husband is a bit jealous of you, that's healthy. That's, you know.
Oh my God,
so
we haven't
healthy.
We haven't even got to the jealous comment yet.
So
oh my God,
healthy.
Listen,
so
we
healthy.
haven't even made it to the jealous comment yet.
Don't booty your charm. Oh my God. Sorry.
Oh my God.
But genuinely, let me go on to the comments, unless you have anything else to say, Lejla.
I can't. I've got a ton of things to say. I've got a ton of things to say, but like, because my thing is, abuse doesn't need to match your culture per se to manipulate you, right? I'm just using my own lived experience as an example. It just needs to match your conditioning, and that's what makes cultural trauma so potent, that you are already prepped to normalize control, to dismiss your own comfort, and to internalize that blame. So when a partner, whoever your partner is, mirrors those patterns, it doesn't feel foreign, it actually feels familiar. And that's why it's so dangerous, because even when you leave the culture physically, you know what I mean, you still carry it mentally. And especially for diaspora women who seem to be free, but freedom isn't geography. No. It's mental and emotional, right? And if your ideas of love and loyalty and womanhood are shaped by a deeply patriarchal, misogynistic system, then your relationship, no matter who you're with, will mirror that.
Yeah.
Wherever you go in the world. And it completely exposes that illusion, that choice. What does it mean, choice under coercive control? It's not real choice. And this is why, even like in one of our episodes before, when we talked about our mums, and I was like, they chose this, they chose that. But I use that term really loosely. Yeah. Because it's not real choice when it's done under coercive control. Exactly. If your partner has to give you permission to do something,
It's not it.
But then also makes it clear some way, somehow you're going to be punished for making your own decision. How in any way is that, how is that a healthy relationship?
It's not. It's just a literal volcano waiting to just erupt. And the only person that is going to suffer the heart of that explosion is the woman, because she's going to be put at the firing line, no one else, because the man is always safe. The men are always safe. They can always, you know,
men are safe wherever they go in the world.
Yeah.
They are safe wherever they go in the world. Like men have safe spaces absolutely everywhere. They infiltrate every single space. Yeah, absolutely, they absolutely do. And that's why when he says stuff like "Yon lazdru femnat,"
he's privileged because he knows he can say it and no one's actually going to come up to him and question him about it.
Yeah, like as if like today's women are so spoiled.
Hi medet hi.
Hi medet hi.
Kor ners nokinamo kor.
Like as if like we're not so tired of constantly surviving the silence, the emotional labor, the domestic work, the guilt. Just the guilt alone is enough.
Yeah, exactly. Just the guilt alone. And, you know, when you're brought up in our culture, specifically in the Albanian community, because as a woman, you're carrying so much. And I always say, and I will always stand by my statement, Vojza kur lind është e mallkume. A woman that's a girl that's born is cursed from day one, because that's how she's treated from day one. And she has to carry so much of the culture burden of the culture onto her back and make sure that she fits and ticks all these boxes, because if she doesn't, she's getting ostracized and she's getting kicked out of this community. And how do you survive when you only know the Albanian community? You don't know anyone else. You don't know anything else. You can't assimilate in a foreign culture when all you've been taught and all you've been raised in is in your own culture, your own language, your own food and whatever it is. You know, our culture is so complex. Everything intertwines with each other. There is no simple way to help a woman. It's so complex. It's so complex.
Yeah, absolutely. Like even when he says musanyak, like as if don't chase him, like she's not worthy of that.
Yeah.
And he thinks that he thinks a woman isn't worthy if she's not easy to control.
Yeah.
And then even then I don't think he thinks a woman is worthy regardless. But that part, like, it really gets me, because it's not that women have changed, it's that women have stopped accepting the bare minimum and stopped confusing fear for respect. And now that women are choosing themselves and choosing freedom, choosing lives that don't revolve around men and male approval and male gaze, suddenly they become a problem, right? And it's so deeply misogynistic, because the idea that we're spoiled for wanting autonomy, that only makes sense in a culture that sees women as possessions.
Yeah, sees women.
So what are you telling me about our culture, please?
Yeah, sees women as the maid that they sleep with and have kids, and that's it. A possession, no identity of herself, which is why they use like chica whoever, gruya whoever, nosia whoever, rea whoever. They never actually say the woman's name.
Well, yeah, because it's not a grief of connection, right? It's not a grief of losing a connection. It's losing control.
Exactly.
So using that kind of language, spoiled, don't chase them, chica saina, chica hatina, chica, like never actually giving the woman her own identity is a way of punishing women for stepping out the box that they're never meant to stay in the first place.
And keep them in line forever.
Yeah. And that's why I'm going to be blue in the face, but we cannot take these as casual comments.
No.
Because they're a reflection of mindsets.
Definitely not as casual comments. These have to be taken as serious comments. And these have to be taken as comments if someone just came up to you and said them straight to your face. Because that's genuinely how I see all of these videos and all of these comments. I take them as if someone literally came up to me, stopped me in the street and literally said to me, no one would ever do it, but that's how I take it. That's how I take it, because they've got the privilege to do that.
Yeah. And they feel safe enough to, and they feel entitled to, and they're enabled to, because who's going to question them?
No one. Who's going to question them? No one.
Absolutely. Even yeah. I know, and all of it comes down to essentially the ownership and control over women. Even when he says, "Mare korpodel me babene vet the me barken splum." Why? Who owns her? Who owns her?
I didn't know she was a horse. Sorry, I was not part of that. Like, I didn't understand.
Who owns her? Does she not have bodily autonomy? No?
Clearly not.
And if she does have autonomy, she's shameful? No? Is that how it works? No? Because her body must belong to her dad, right? And then to her to her husband.
That's literally it. That is,
and there's no stage where it belongs to her herself. Oh, I can see Leo thinking she's about to choose one and go in.
I am. I'm just trying to. I'm trying to think. Should I? Someone laughed at my horse comment. Well, yeah, because that's literally a stars. I'm trying to think whether I should just choose one of them that's just stupid as F, or if I should just find a nice one. Oh, this one's actually so nice. Klom çaştı o tübese kue keçe o arth. Po çakaf şate bre. Balmir. Krösore me kon rahat. Chaya koransi.
Exactly. Actually, a lot of the comments actually made me feel really proud. Like, it was really clear that people were pushing back in the comments. A lot of them were horrific, but a lot of them were also really pushing back.
Yeah, a lot of them were like, "På mer too" to him, make it mentality with this mentality. A lot of them are actually mer är famnen se på ett merka katastrof. Yeah, mer är famnen, Leona. Mer är famnen. He doesn't even deserve a famine. Doesn't even deserve a dog, let alone a woman.
Well, no, because why would you want to be with someone who reduces you to property? Why? When he thinks that your body needs to constantly be watched and judged and discussed and make sure that it's not something that's provocative, because in our culture, women are always being measured against the comfort of men. Why would you want to be with someone like that anyway?
Exactly. Lola makes a really good point. Adi could jag se famnen ka banana e baba e nok është prone askojt. Famnen doja respektoje full me ato, jo me thon e me ba se on jam, on vendose, on dua, on kështu, on ashtu, jo më rese asnjë lloj famën nuk të ndëgjon, të jetën sa të japet mundësia të jap duart. Kalov Schmier. Basically, she's saying, at the end of the day, a female is also made from a mum and dad, and she's no one's property, and you have to respect her and you have to love her and you have to talk to her, and not, oh, I will say, I will decide, I will this way. So thank you, Lola.
women aren't vessels just for men's pride.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not community reputation managers.
But also, it's as if they forget that we also have parents and we were also made the same way they were made.
But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to be that we have parents. It doesn't need to be that we are someone's sister, someone's wife, someone's mum. It doesn't need to be. We are wholly deserving of safety just as ourselves. We don't need to be someone else's something for us to be deserving of that.
Yeah. I just want to also just read this comment out from Double D. And just, this is coming from a diaspora child. So I want to read it because it's very relevant for all the comments that are saying like, oh no, this only happens in the villages. Mire ka, kujti djeg, net e pinni gott uiftaft. Wow. Unë jom lind e jom rrit në Suedi edhe halo asnjëherë s'jom vesh as cullak më çore dit. Qikat në Kosovë si jashtë tash janë çu pesh. Knej ka Scandinavia thojnë për femnat shqiptare kurva, më fal shpreha. Edhe, you know, I'm not gonna say that word. Nisoj kur si done se të le far tipe, kë koka tamën mashkull edhe bravo.
Girls, please don't ever date someone like the guy on this video. Please don't. He's not a man. Please, there's nothing masculine about the man that's in this video.
I've got a man in my
God,
house.
That's so worrying.
I've got a man in my house. This one over here, I don't know what he is. He's a fake. He's not a man. He's a baby boy. He's a baby boy. I can't. Një femën që lyp me shku diskotek, kur e ka frajerin në det, me shu që ajo femën nuk është.
Oh, don't, because this whole thing, yeah, it got me. Like, even the way that the guy who's interviewing him frames the question, would you let your wife go on holiday? Like, what do you mean, would you let your wife go on holiday? Why would that even be a question? What control does he have there?
But also,
what kind of hierarchy is this where the husband has ownership over his wife's choices? Like, the language itself places the husband in the role of the gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Of what she can and cannot do.
Exactly.
Like, it's so entitled. It makes me feel physically sick that she is not autonomous, that she's just an extension of him.
And she doesn't own her own body or her own mind and thoughts.
And how dare she want to go on holiday on her own with her friends? How dare she have joy outside of him?
Yeah, how dare she? She should be at home.
How dare she?
Waiting
Absolutely.
for him to come back from dating. How dare she? How dare she? It's disgusting. It's disgusting. This is the thing, and you know, we read these comments out because a lot of people just this doesn't exist. Yes, it does. It actually does. Yeah, it does. Yeah, I will waffle as long as I want. Thank you very much.
It's all right. We got it already.
It's my friend. It's det porque puncie.
And I think there's so much in this as well. Like, even when we're talking about women being property and of others and what they wear and things like that, it's such a dangerous pipeline because we do have this huge like modesty culture. Going back to that comment where she says about provision si kurva, blah blah blah. I cannot explain how much that actually fries my brain, because the direct pipeline from modesty culture to rape culture is insane. Because when a woman is seen as a reflection of her family's honor and not as a human being of her own right, any harm done to her becomes her fault and her burden and her shame. And that's how you create a system where women don't report abuse, where girls and women are staying silent even when the violence is happening within their own homes. Because you have to understand that domestic abuse and sexual violence is being perpetrated in women's homes. They don't need to go outside wearing short skirts and whatever they want to wear. Is happening within their own homes, but they're conditioned to believe that being violated is their fault.
Yeah, exactly. And I also just want to actually read this comment out because this one actually really pisses me off. Menti05, I don't know what the hell he's got in his little whatever. Doesn't matter. Medal tu ne emlume tisek shur at famine. Basically, if
bullshit, you can wear a hijab or a miniskirt and still be a victim of sexual violence. Absolute bullshit. Because violence isn't about what you wear; it's about power. It's about misogyny, and violence and abuse and the it doesn't discriminate. It will target anything that threatens control.
And I was just gonna add that studies show in areas where there are more women that are actually covered up, they face more sexual violence than any other group. Because
But this is why feminism is
feel,
vital.
Yeah, because men feel entitled to it.
But don't you see that men feel entitled to women regardless what they wear? It doesn't matter what they wear. If they're dressed, however they're dressed, it doesn't matter. And this is why feminism is so crucial and vital, especially for women who are as vulnerable as Albanian women, because feminism doesn't say wear less clothes, wear more clothes. Feminism says that your body is yours, full stop, and that you're not responsible for the actions that other people subject you to. You don't need to be modest to be safe. You need a world that doesn't harm women. It doesn't matter what you wear, where you are in the world, you deserve that safety.
Yeah, exactly.
And like the whole thing about like modest, because there was somewhere in the video where he says, "Ty się wiesz prepara chica kanjet van matmir," something like that.
That's not true. That's not true.
It's not true, but like modest girls get better husbands. Shut up, man. It's so dumb.
What are you talking
it's so
about?
dumb.
Fuck off. That's stupid. No, women,
right?
They don't.
It's just it's training men to view women as property. All of this is all that it does. And then it shows women that they have to internalize this blame for the violence and for the abuse.
Yeah, exactly. When it's not true at all. All you're trying to do is divide women and try and reinforce that mentality that you have to dress a certain way for a man to accept you, because a man's opinion is what should matter to you, not your own
absolutely.
opinion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not your
absolutely.
own
It should be a man's opinion. Yeah.
Be a man's
absolutely.
opinion.
Everything you do should be for man's approval, for the man's gaze. Yeah.
Ugh. Fucking bullshit. Sorry.
We've got to curb this swearing. YouTube is not.
Sorry.
We are live on Channel 4. Please do not swear.
It's alright. It's alright.
I know. And the fact of the matter is, the entitlement is so deep rooted, isn't it? That to see women who are not autonomous individuals, but as an extension of themselves, of men, so like first their fathers, then their husbands, it's like a social contract where women's freedoms is conditional. And it needs male permission. It needs the male's gaze. It needs men's approval, no matter where they are in the world. And that any woman who exists outside of that and makes those decisions for herself is a threat.
Yeah, exactly. And we have to go on TV appearances like this one and reinforce that same ideology and mentality to spread the word, propaganda, and keep everyone in line. And you know, the comments like "Hi Medet Hi Pokosh Mertu" to the boy, to like "Porrete Kreten and Katon," that, but you're not actually, you know, these comments are great because you're pushing back, but no one in these comments is actually asking him why. Like, no one's actually calling him out for perpetrator behavior. No one's actually saying you've got perpetrator behavior, you've got coercive control behavior, you've got this kind of behavior. No one does it because no one's actually, and I feel so bad saying this, but we're not even educated to understand these behaviors.
Absolutely.
So how
and it's like even the framing of the questions are so normalized, like the way that he asked the question, like what do you mean? Because it's not up to him what his wife does. It's her choice. And the way that it's asked so casually, as if like it's reasonable for men to allow their wives to have basic freedom, to allow their sisters to have basic freedom. And like this normalization makes it so incredibly difficult for women to push back without facing accusations of disrespect, without being called disloyal, without being called crazy.
And you know what's even sadder is the fact that I've lived throughout my whole marriage, I have been asked, and not me specifically, but my husband's been asked, where is Leo? Where's Leonarda? Why is she there? Who is she with? All of this. And it not only puts you in a shit position because you're automatically reminded that you do not belong to yourself. You do not belong to yourself, but you are also having to then explain to, not even explain, but you're also having to discuss this whole thing with your husband and try and process it and come up with like pushbacks. Not that I'm saying my husband doesn't come with pushbacks, but he's the type of person to literally tell you, fuck off. My wife can do whatever she wants. But I've heard it from everyone. Where's Leonarda? Why did she go to Sweden? Who did she go with?
Yeah, how dare you go on your own? Oh my God, how dare you do something for yourself?
I've had people call my parents and ask my parents, why did Leo go there? And it's like, what do you mean, why did Leo go? Do you not know my daughter? She's a raging feminist. Like, she'll go to Africa if she wants to. No one's stopping
But that's
her.
the thing, isn't it? Because feminism challenges this entitlement of like insisting on women's sovereignty, right? That a woman's autonomy is not negotiable and it's not conditional.
Exactly.
And that's what feminism does. It calls for a whole dismantling of not just the overt violence that our community has been taught that this is what domestic violence is, or domestic abuse, but it's the everyday cultural, social, societal, the linguistic practices that reinforce male dominance.
Yeah. And when you actually have someone in the family, because I've seen this change, when you actually have someone in the family that is a raging feminist and that does actually tell you their exact thoughts and actually starts talking to you, or you see them and you see how they just their body language and how they deal with situations in their own lives and how they deal with comments, you not only start to question your whole life, but you actually start to understand from a woman's perspective. Because I've seen it in my own family. They are starting to understand and they are like, oh, I never looked at it that way. I can't believe after all these years you said something and now I can look at it that way and I feel disgusted.
Well, yeah, that's why feminist resistance is essential to reclaiming spaces. It's essential to rewriting really harmful narratives, and you have to keep on going with that.
Yeah. Donanika just said, I had relatives try and make it seem like going to uni was a bad thing to my parents. How sad.
Very.
How sad of those relatives. I hope you did go to uni. I think you did, but I really hope you pushed back and were like, I'm going to uni, I don't care. And how that's just that's a crazy concept, but it's not surprising. I'm not surprised, because just going to Boss Man down the road to the corner shop seems like you have to literally fill out a whole application if you wanted to do that. I want to go to Boss Man to get a drink. No.
Oh no, I was made to go to the shop from the age of 7. I had to go.
No, my parents.
That was the eldest daughter. Do you know there was something else that he says in that, right? And it's just come to my head now. He says something like, "Onyam jealous."
Oh yeah.
Like, so for those of you who don't understand what I've just said, he says, "I'm the jealous type," as if like, oh sorry, it just makes my whole skin crawl. Like, it gives me the ick massively, as if like he's declaring this dominance, right?
Yeah.
Because in our culture, jealousy is so romanticized.
It's a fantasy.
And absolutely. And it's treated like the sign of love, like a man who cares too much. And we don't like, it's so romanticized in our culture. It's become like a fantasy. And I see it even in our younger generation. So when we talk about things are better in the diaspora, no, they're not. I see it played out in the younger generation.
Yep.
And we don't talk about how often this so-called caring becomes control, and how socially acceptable that control is when it's directed to women.
Yeah, and it's downplayed as like, hide, because, you know, he's just a jealous type. He'll grow out of it. Like, as you get older, like, you'll both grow out of it, because, you know, you'll both get old and there's nothing to be jealous of. So it's never actually seen as like, actually, this is a massive red flag, because jealousy is just once, it's a perpetrator's, it's like a perpetrator giving themselves away with their own body language and what they're saying, because they're saying, oh, I'm the jealous type. You're giving yourself away. You're basically telling the whole world that you're a perpetrator. Thank you so much.
Yeah, because he doesn't he doesn't see a woman's independence as her right. It's a threat to him.
No. Yeah,
and
exactly.
his authority, and the fact that like he says it so casually as well tells you how deep rooted it is. It's actually rotten.
Yeah,
he doesn't feel any
disgusting.
shame when he says it. He feels no shame. I mean, the whole statement he makes, he has no shame. He's entitled, because in a patriarchal, misogynistic culture like ours, men are taught to believe that they own a woman's time, her body, her movements, her joy, everything. Like, it's not just enough that she's loyal. She has to also perform that loyalty by making herself small and available and predictable.
Exactly. They even own the womb. They own the womb, something that a woman is born with. They own the womb and they have full rights to it. And you see this day in and day out when it comes to, for example, when they have a girl instead of a boy, they blame the woman. When she can't get pregnant, they blame the woman. And actually, in fact, it's more the men's fault. When, you know, all these issues, they own the womb, they own her body, they own her mind, they own every aspect of her being and her life. And just a hair thickness, the thickness of a hair outside of that she steps, he has to reinforce that control. But that control is labeled as jealousy, because I care so much about you. I don't want other men to look at you. I like, you are mine and I am yours.
I know, it actually gives me the ick so badly, but
disgusting.
Even though like we're attacking him and he deserves it, right? This isn't just him, because this isn't isolated. This is a whole entire system that backs men like him up. And the interviewer, he doesn't challenge that statement whatsoever. Like, and this is something that whoever watches the video, like the audience, the listeners, the viewers, they're just gonna laugh and nod along.
Yeah. And
or you get
ironic?
young bucks, like the little boys that have come into our comments saying, making really stupid, dumb comments.
Yeah.
They're just going to laugh along, and then they're going to repeat that narrative, because women's autonomy and their self-control is still seen as negotiable.
Exactly. And isn't it ironic that a man is interviewing him instead of a woman? Because I can guarantee you that a woman would probably feel so uncomfortable and might actually challenge him on his own thoughts and his own beliefs.
Depends what woman.
Depends what woman. But it's so ironic that, and I've seen it time and time again. It's not just this once. I've seen it so many times that a man is always interviewing another man and kind of asking him about these opinions and this mentality, and allowing him to reinforce his own, you know, this tradition for the whole world to see. It's always been a male interviewer.
Yeah, and this is why we have to, I mean, like, double standards in our community is so rife anyway, but like, men can go anywhere, do anything, and they're still seen as responsible, busy, hardworking, because that's something that's echoed in our community. The men in our community are hardworking. We're not taking away from how hardworking the whole of our community is. We are such hard workers. But a woman then goes on a trip with her friends, and suddenly we have to question her morals and her respect and her worthiness. And suddenly her whole character is up for debate for simply enjoying life without a male chaperone.
Exactly. But also, in the same breath, if a woman has built her own fortune or business or whatever it is, then no one can ever marry her, because no one can control her. But a man that has done the same thing, like, you know, he is a respected man, he's done all of this by himself, and anyone that marries him is so lucky. But a woman that does the same thing is seen as a problematic woman, the woman that is too outspoken because she knows exactly what she wants, the problem woman, and we can't control her. Not all the time, because coercive control and love bombing and perp behavior can pretty much infect any type of woman. But that's just how women are labeled.
Well, yeah, because we've normalized the mindset. The groundwork has already been laid for emotional abuse, for isolation, for coercive control, for the wider community being able to enable that and perpetrate it themselves. So yeah, eventually for violence that's going to happen, whether it's physical,
Exactly.
sexual, however you place, however it happens, because when men believe that a woman's freedom is a threat, they'll do anything to suppress it. The system will do anything to suppress it. And society, whether it's the culture, the community, however you want to label it, they'll look the other way.
Exactly. Yeah, they will look the other way because it's too much of an energy waster to help.
Yeah, because it's too uncomfortable to actually expose fragile masculinity, to expose how much violence and abuse happens in particular communities and cultures.
Exactly. And why waste your money and time in that? Why? Nah, like these women, they've been doing this for hundreds and thousands of years. Like it's normal. This is what they're made for.
Absolutely.
Where I'm laughing because it's a laughing matter.
We have chatted tonight.
I know.
I don't even know if we stopped for air. Jesus.
والله
كنا فول. Man fun, mummy was a fool.
Mummy was a fool. And here we are every 2 weeks. Every 2 weeks, streaming and speaking and speaking and speaking. But I think this is just so important because no one actually, we don't get to see a lot of people do what we're doing. So,
Monk, you're my fool.
We're not going anywhere. Do you not worry about that. We're not going
But thank you so much for joining us this evening. If you guys have any other videos you come across, whether it's like TikTok, Insta, YouTube, wherever you see it, drop us a DM.
Yes, please send it to us because we will go after
we
it.
will be more than happy to do a reaction.
Yes.
And listen to you guys' suggestions.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. I need to go to sleep. I'm so tired.
You did so well today, though.
I did. I'm exhausted, guys. If you've made it this far with me, like this heat has knocked me for 6. I'm also on my period. That's also completely wiped me out.
Yeah.
It's just been chaos. But we made it to the end. We made it to the end of the week.
Yes.
Thank you so much for joining us this evening. And we'll see you again in 2 weeks' time.
2 weeks. We'll see you again in 2 weeks' time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you. Bye.